Well, howdy, y'all. Gonna go reverse order this time. Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch. Happy to have you all here. Excited today. Got a bit of a different stream. You're gonna see some camera from me today. Don't worry, I'm not gonna be on it. You don't have to see my ugly face. You get to see the world. It's gonna be beautiful. Nature's awesome sometimes, unless it messes up your paint job. It's been really doing that to me lately. Really annoying. Anyway, got a bit of a different one. Topl The Grid is the title for today. We're going to be going off the grid a little bit, venturing out into the world, taking Topl out there, and we're going to explore why we are able to do that a little bit. Our blockchain's a little bit different from things like Bitcoin. It allows us to do that. So I am joined here today by Brad, our technical operations manager, and Nick, our head of developer ecosystem. Welcome, Brad. Welcome, Nick. Happy to have you.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yep, thanks. It's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. So let's, I guess let's jump in. I don't have a tremendous plan. It was mostly like preparation, no planning type thing. I usually do neither of those things. It's great. PowerPoint. Topl The Grid. Again, I'm one of those zero-based index types of folks. So part 0 of 7091. 7091 is that's a technical thing. We'll get into that at some other discussion. Hopefully we'll have a whole bunch of these in the series though, because we really want to go explore the world, right? Absolutely. Today we're going to be making steak and pie. It's a cooking show. We're the three of us. We're Michelin Star Chefs. We're going to be cooking today. I'm just kidding. I'm an engineer. I don't know how to cook. Make ravioli out of a can. Okay, so yeah, let's get started. First, let's start out with consensus. And it's pronounced, I'm not even going to say, I'll let the crowd figure that one out. Okay, so what is consensus? Well, it's the act of like decentralizing the decision-making process. And it requires the participants to agree on a certain set of rules in order to actually, make decisions as a group in a decentralized manner. We've got two main flavors of this. Well, there are a couple others, but the two main ones, we got proof of work, and that's where all the participants in the network agree that the individuals with the most computer power get to make more blocks. And then in the sorry, it muted me. And then in the other flavor, we have proof of stake, and that's where the participants agree that individuals with more investment into the network get to make more blocks. Okay, so Bitcoin is probably the most well-known proof of work. Ethereum is probably the second. Probably going to be, again, one of the more well-known in proof of stake. They're working on that. But Topl, we're definitely going to be the most well-known in the future, but we are proof of stake. Okay, so that's where we live. We live on the type of network where more investment, like a financial investment type thing, allows you to make more blocks. Whereas on the Bitcoin side of things, it's all about who has more compute power. And the way that those two things, they factor into the security of each of those types of consensus mechanism.
Hey, Sean, to hit
Yep.
on the two of those, what is the logic on resilience to manipulation?
Yeah, so like everyone kind of thinks of Bitcoin as like the gold standard, so to speak, of like resiliency to attacks. Because you need more compute power, like yourself, than the rest of the network, essentially. So you need 51% of the compute power in order to overtake at least most flavors of proof of work. In proof of stake, you have a similar resiliency, but it's based on like the investment again. So like how much of the stake, how much of a piece of the pie not the Raspberry Pi kind, but like the circular kind of pie. How large of your portion of the pie um, determines who gets to make the blocks. And as long as more than half of that pie is owned by honest participants, then it's pretty much as secure. We're working on like the actual security analysis and everything. That's what our research team, folks like Aaron and Hans, are working real hard at being able to actually show the security analysis between proof of work and proof of stake, and how we can achieve at least something similar to what proof of work can achieve in our flavor of proof of stake. I don't want to like overcommit us, but I mean we can do some awesome things. So yeah, I mean they can do similarly durable things, I guess, just in a different way.
Yeah, I would like to add that. So this was a conversation I was having last night with somebody that's, there's ideological differences and cost differentials that come into play a lot when you're talking to people with very different motivations. So one of the main key points from an ideological perspective is this idea of a pre-mine. Of when Bitcoin started, there was no Bitcoin on the chain until somebody minted the first block, or I guess the second block. But when it comes to Bitcoin and proof of work consensus-based chains, there's they push for ideological perspective that it should be the most egalitarian from the sense of it costs you essentially nothing to enter into participation in the network, meaning as long as you have the compute power required to mine a block, you can receive tokens from the transaction fees and or the reward in that block. So that's primarily where that's where all of the Bitcoin has been created over time, is through mining blocks, and that being the block reward given out to miners, versus proof of stake, where in this case we would have to seed the distribution of stake amongst people. So this is something that we have looked into for a long time, as far as creating a more equitable distribution of tokens when it comes to um, selling those tokens or distributing them amongst the community freely. And so we've been working on some interesting ideas that we have talked about a little bit, but I think we'll start talking a lot more in earnest over the next few months, especially in 2023, when it comes to how we actually plan to distribute those tokens, since we are proof of stake. And I guess the second point I wanted to bring up was the cost perspective of, and the reason why we kind of wanted to go through this exercise today was somebody brought up proof of history as an alternative of proof of work and proof of stake. And so Solana is the primary chain that uses proof of history. And so proof of history is a third alternative amongst other alternatives to proof of work and proof of stake. But proof of work and proof of history both suffer from a similar issue, which is you need large amounts of resources to compute proof of work or proof of history. So in proof of history's case, you require a minimum of 128 gigabytes of RAM to process all the messages, and you need a large amount of bandwidth to facilitate passing those messages between nodes to sync the nodes and broadcast new blocks. That basically locks you into, you have to have essentially a data center sized setup to be able to handle running those nodes. And then for proof of work, it has become a little bit of an arms race over time, where we've moved on from being able to run it on your laptop to having to have a desktop computer, to now we're on ASICs, where you have dedicated boxes and units that just sit in air conditioned rooms that pump out a lot of heat and do a lot of work for a very specific circuit that is the hashing algorithm for Bitcoin, but don't really do anything else, and that costs real money and real tangible goods. So it costs electricity, costs capital to buy that computer in the first place. But it is a real cost, and many people may not be able to afford running their own node in any real sense when it comes to that. And to a much lesser extent is the storing of state or the storing of history for full nodes. But thank you, that's very nice. So ASIC is application specific integrated circuit.
I'm gonna try to throw acronyms up as we go throughout this broadcast here.
Fantastic. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up as yes. So there's a comment. Can you use the heat that miners make? Actually, plenty of people do. They use it to heat their homes in the winter, but obviously, if you live in a hot place like living in Texas, it's not that great.
Yeah, I've seen people on YouTube placing ASIC miners in like little tents and running it into their air vents to heat their whole house and just offset heating completely in the winter time. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was all to say that, this is some of the considerations that went into why we even chose to go with proof of stake in the first place. And, one of the things that we've maximized for is decentralization and being able to, run full nodes or light clients on very light architecture and hardware. So that way, we can promote decentralization, be able to have people actually participating, in the validation process without having to spend inordinate amounts of money to just, buy the real physical goods required to even participate in this process.
Yeah, I mean, the other main reason is proof of work just sounds like a lot of work.
Fair enough.
Sounds like it. Turns out it's actually a lot more work to implement proof of stake and a lot less work to implement proof of work, even though proof of work has to do a whole lot more work. Okay, so why proof of stake? Why not proof of chicken? I can't answer that one. But proof of work is like it's simple. So Nick kind of talked about like the circuitry that goes into these ASIC, the mining hardware. Well, it's the circuit that it's got to go through. It's doing like a really, really simple thing, but like what's bigger than a billion? Like the next step up of that, yeah, that many times per second, I think, is like how many times it needs to do that really simple operation. So proof of work is simple to do, but because you need to do so much work, it is horrible for the environment, as Nick said. Proof of stake, on the other hand, like implementing all the machinery to get like all the like stake shifting and registrations and delegation and everything that needs to go into the consensus mechanism. Just like I didn't even mention, there's like a whole other half of chain selection that needs to exist in proof of stake. Like, so it's a very complex system in order to implement proof of stake, but it's actually relatively simple for your computer to run that system. Like it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't take a whole lot of computer power, which is kind of the whole point of what we're doing today. I guess on the subject of power, I'll throw this one up here. So these are like so it's now dedicated hardware that is running Bitcoin essentially. It's not, as Nick mentioned, it's not people's laptops anymore. It's not people's desktops anymore. It's not even people's supercomputers anymore. Those are useless. Those are way too slow. You got to use these things. So like these things, they literally just do that one simple operation over and over again. You can see that there's that column hash rate. So like the first one there, 49, what is that, tera hashes per second, something like that. I don't know. People can do the terminology better than me.
Yep, 49 terahash.
So yeah, that's a lot of thinking to do in 1 second. And the power that it takes is listed in the next column, 6,400 watts. So like by comparison, if you want to go down to like either the big blue Lowe's store or the big orange Home Depot store and pick up a generator, you need to get like the biggest one there to run that sucker. Like it's ridiculous. That's crazy, and that doesn't even include, as Nick mentioned, the air conditioner. Like you need to cool that thing off if you're running it in a hot environment. So like that's just an enormous amount of power just to run one of these things. And like people are running above. Sorry, muted me again. Thanks, Bluetooth. So yeah, like people run like like a bunch of these things all right next to each other in these big, huge data centers, and they're literally like powered by power plants. You know, ripping through coal or whatever just to crank out ones and zeros for Bitcoin. Again, it makes it really secure, but wow, that's a lot of energy. I don't know if do either you want to comment on this. I feel like both of you probably got a few things to say here.
Um, let's see here. Water immersion miners. I've seen them, and that's more where I've seen them is like in graphics cards. I haven't seen too many water cooled miners unless it's in like a data center or a large facility. When it comes to that, and let me see if I could see this. Yeah, the energy consumption is absolutely absurd, um, and um, the waste of the machines itself when they're broken. There's really not a good process for fixing the ASIC machines. So once they break, they just get thrown in landfills or just sold on eBay as parts, and then just a bunch of junk is created as well.
Yeah, I don't think it actually lists on here as far as I can tell, but when it has that profitability, that's comparing basically its hash rate with the amount of power consumption it takes to produce, the amount of hashes that it's doing, um, and then um, the uh, the electricity cost. So I think generally I've seen it where they put it at something like I think like 0.07 or 0.09 cents per kilowatt.
The default on ASIC miner value is at the very bottom. At least on my webpage, it's 0.12, but in my area, it's 0.14 kilowatts, so it's far less profitability.
Cool. Got you. Yeah. Oh, well, it's even higher than I was thinking. So that's 12 or 14 cents per kilowatt. Yeah, so that's that's going to make or break the profitability of running any of these. So you're in the first place going to pay thousands of dollars probably for a single one of these miners, and then you can see like if you had this Apollo one that was just released on Ethereum, which is another thing. It's reaching a max of $71 per day based on the price of BT of I guess ETH. And so, based on the power consumption with the hash rate of what you're getting for that miner, sure, you're getting $71 a day based on the price as it fluctuates day by day. And you are generally going to be like in a pool of miners. So you're not doing this on your own. You're going to be joining like a mining pool where you're getting a cut of the profits. Um, so electricity cost is a huge one when it comes to running these miners. Is if you can shave off, even a couple cents, it makes a difference between if you're actually turning a profit or not from running this. But I did want to throw out that that top one is actually running on ETH hash, which for anybody that's is paying attention, the Ethereum merge is coming up pretty soon in September. So um, it's kind of actually surprising me that they would release a miner for that's targeting ETH hash. If
Yeah,
the merge is coming up, in a couple of months.
and it being used is $19,800. up to $40,000 to potentially not even be a thing here soon.
Yeah, so it's going to take you it could take you easily a year or two to actually make your money back running one of these.
It's also interesting, like these numbers, like that hash rate column. It's never going to go down. Like the amount of energy that we're dumping into this, it's not going to really go down. It's like people are just going to pour more and more energy into the system, assuming that it's successful, which is, I guess, it's a bold assumption, but assuming that, a proof of work network can be successful and used by more and more people around the globe, that just means that more and more energy needs to go into securing the network, which isn't really very sustainable or scalable.
Yeah, change it by hash rate to the highest hash rate. And that leads to one of the questions: is power consumption bad? Nick, I think you hit on that. With when it comes to power consumption, it's burning fuels and coal, and I think I read an article earlier today that due to the droughts, like people can't even charge their electric cars. So just having a huge power consumption is definitely not good at all for the environment.
Yeah, so a lot of these you'll notice the year. It's nice that they put the release date on here because that's actually an important consideration. Is typically if you go back, a couple of years, these miners are quickly going out of date compared to, it's essentially an arms race, right? You're increasing the hash rate while you're maximizing the hash rate while minimizing the power consumption to um, get better and faster equipment. And yeah, so you'll see it's dominated by everything that from 2014 to 2018, and then the top of the range is being dominated by things that were produced in the last couple of months. So this is a consistent arms race that is producing faster and faster miners. So if it was general computing power when it came to like CPUs or GPUs, I think you could make the case that it you're incentivizing pushing forward like better architecture. But in the case of ASICs, this is truly just a very specific use case. You cannot apply these to other problems to solve. But then one of the questions is, what do you do with the old equipment? Do you recycle it? Do you continue using it? Plenty of these are often, when they become older, sold to areas that have subsidized or cheaper power, where in a richer country it may be unprofitable to run these, but if you can ship it off to a country where it's more profit, it's actually profitable to run it, that equipment may still continue to have a longer life cycle. But yeah, this is kind of part of the issue that proof of work from an ideological standpoint still has strong factors when it comes to that pre-mining and distribution of the tokens, but I think has been a continuous problem as far as like environmental reasons, power consumption reasons, like using real costs to derive value on chain.
Alrighty. Any other final thoughts before we stop hating on proof of work?
Send it.
All right. Let's put this thing back up here. Alrighty. So yeah, we showed that, like, proof of work, not great for the environment, consumes a ton of energy in order to run it, and that's never going to decrease. It's just going to keep consuming more and more. Proof of stake consumes like very, very little energy, and that's what I'm hoping to show here in a little bit on today's cooking show. It's totally a cooking show. Always wear safety glasses when cooking. Got mine right here. Don't worry. Oh, they're covered in paint. This is why I said don't wear safety glasses when you're painting. Okay. So yeah, we got a Raspberry Pi and we got our Topl logo. Or the lawyers are probably going to come after me for this. I don't know if you're allowed to mix logos like that, but it's okay. We're off the grid. You can't find me. So the ingredients for today: use only the finest produce. I guess yeah, I'll show these in a second. So our main ingredient, the Raspberry Pi. You need a 4 or a 400. The Raspberry Pi 400 is basically just a 4. I said 1 cup of it because that's what raspberries come in, right? I don't know. It made sense for a recipe. We're gonna go with it. Okay, for our battery. So again, I just needed to list some sort of unit on here. I got a 12-ish volt battery. Really, just for this setup, you only need 5 volts to run a Raspberry Pi, and then another 5 volts to run the screen that I'm using. We had a comment in here. Where's the salt? I think it would be in the battery. That would be my guess. Something like that. The chemistry teacher would probably have some comments here. I don't know. But yeah, so that's where the salt comes into play. It's in the batteries. Okay, and then finally, our solar panel. This is the thing that's actually generating the electricity that goes into the battery. It's pulling from the sun. Thank you, sun. Show that in a second. We're getting a whopping 0 watts out of the panel. So really proving my point here. Oh, geez. Okay. I guess here real quick, I'll just flip this thing on. Yeah, it's showing. Okay. Put that up there. Okay, so I got my my pointy stick here. We've got a keyboard here. That's our Raspberry Pi. It's actually got a Raspberry Pi built into it. But that's the Raspberry Pi 400. You can see here we've got a USB-C power cable running into it. I'll show the number on there in a second, but that's there. Behind it, I got a little screen just kind of showing what I'm doing here, but that's not actually required in order to run a node. Just wanted to kind of show it though. In the back, we've got our battery, and that's my Goal Zero, 3,000 watt hours in there. Not sponsored by Goal Zero, but if you ever want to sponsor us, feel free to reach out. We got some cool batteries. Anyway, all the way in the background, generating exactly 0 watts of electricity for me right now is the solar panel. That's a 12-volt panel, 100 watts. You would need, I guess 60 of those to run that thing on the one of these things.
That solar panel is so spot on in the sun. It's impressive.
Yeah, I set it up a couple hours ago, and turns out the sun moves. Kind of a bummer. Real drag. Yeah, I mean, clearly, like, the Earth doesn't move. That would imply that it's round. Ridiculous. Come on.
So, the Raspberry Pi is the keyboard, right, Sean?
Indeed.
Wow.
And when you order the Raspberry Pi 400, it comes with this mouse here, also Raspberry Pi branded. Lots of fun. So yeah, this has the specs of a Raspberry Pi 4. I probably should have pulled those up, but it's got 4 gigs of memory and it's got 4 CPU cores. I don't know what the clock speed is on each of those cores, but it's pretty heckin' slow, I'll tell you that much. We'll get into that in a second. Okay, let me pop this thing open here again, and then we'll add that back to the stream. Okay, so those are our ingredients for today. I do also have this other laptop that I'm using plugged into the thing, but it's a different story. Okay. Next slide. Preparation. Prep work is necessary for good blocks, of course. Also for, I don't know, like woodworking, metalworking, pretty much everything. You got to prepare first, except for me when I present. I don't know. Anyway, prep work. Step 1, install Raspbian onto a Raspberry Pi. It doesn't have to be Raspbian. That's like the operating system that the folks that made Raspberry Pi came up with. That's the easiest one to install. There are a gazillion tutorials online to figure out how to do that. So once you got that set up, next step, install Java 11. Again, bunch of different ways to skin a cat. I don't know why that's a phrase, but it's such a weird thing to say, skinning a cat. Anyway, there's a bunch of different ways to install Java 11. SDKman is the one that I prefer, so SDKMAN. You just install that on your computer, and then you can go and install Java. You can then do the next step, which is to install SBT. And so that's for compiling Scala projects. So you need that in order to do the next step. Well, I guess, yeah, the next slide. Anyway, next step is to clone Bifrost. So you can run the command git clone and then github.com/topl/Bifrost. And then you need to run git checkout tetra. Okay, so technically, if you just check out the tetra branch, this won't work right now. I'm assuming that people might watch this like tomorrow when that pull request will be merged. It's not technically on the tetra branch. It's going to be in there soon, what I'm going to be showing. So yeah, you just clone the repo and you check out the tetra branch. Okay, so that is the preparation work. I didn't show that today. And again, this goes back to that whole 4-core, really, really slow clock speed on the Raspberry Pi. Just doing these install Java 11 and install SBT, that was like 30 minutes, something like that. It takes forever, really slow. And then once you're lucky enough to get that installed, well, I guess we can move on to the next slide, which is you got to like go and build and compile the node before you can go and run it. So once you've built and compiled it, you can actually run the node, but the building and compile part takes about 15 more minutes. So we would be way too far past time in order to do all that today. So I did all the prep work ahead of time. It's the first time for everything, right? Okay, so I got Java 11, I've got SBT, and I've got Bifrost cloned, and I do already have it compiled. It's still going to take forever to like just get the thing to start, but hey, making progress. Anyway, that should just kind of demonstrates. It takes a whole lot of. Sorry, I muted it again. I hate this. I don't get it. It drives me crazy. Anyway, so yeah, it takes like a lot of time and energy just to build the thing, but once you've actually run the thing, it's not so bad anymore. You can actually run a blockchain. Anyway, I've been rambling in a bit here. These are like the steps that you would take to run the thing. So I guess I might as well just hop right in. So I am currently broadcasting from a Raspberry Pi right now. How about that? Raspberry Pi 400. Okay. So you can see here I am in this directory git/Bifrost and ls, and you can see this is what you would see on like GitHub if you were to go and look at it right now. Yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to do which one do I want to do? I'm going to do option B here, which is SBT node tetra /run. That's just for the sake of demonstrations. If I do it in Docker, then I got to deal with like port forwarding in order to do the second half of the demo from some other laptop. So go the simple approach for now. So SBT, I'm also going to change the amount of memory that I'm putting or that I'm allowing SBT to run with. I'm going to set it to like 2000 megs. And then this is where I actually do the node tetra /run. Okay, so that's our command. And it's going to take a little while, unfortunately. So yeah, I guess so yeah, this is gonna just like run through a couple of things in order to like, I don't know, it needs to pretend it needs to compile things even though it's already compiled. It needs to figure out that it's already compiled things, is what I mean to say. So while that's going, maybe we could see if there are any questions or anything. I guess we will do Sean, face reveal when? That's my face. All right, we're revealed. Okay, next question.
Did you also want to catch people up, since we're a little over the halfway mark, on what we're talking about, what we're doing, just for any new joiners?
Yeah, yep. Real quick. So never heard of a peanut butter called GIF, but send that over to me. I'd be interested. Okay, yeah. So what are we doing here today? If you're jumping in a little bit late to the stream, that's perfectly okay, because we rambled for the first half hour of the stream. But our ramblings were about, basically, we talked a bit about consensus, and then there are two main flavors of consensus. There's proof of work and proof of stake. Things like Bitcoin and Ethereum currently use proof of work, and then things like Cardano and really cool things like Topl use proof of stake. So that's our consensus mechanism. And the reason that we chose proof of stake is because it is a lot more energy efficient. It doesn't consume nearly as much power to run a blockchain node, which I'm hoping to demonstrate here. So just a brief recap on what we're doing here today. That's what we talked about before. What I'm doing here today is trying to run our Topl Bifrost blockchain node on a Raspberry Pi. So very limited hardware, and it's technically running off of a battery right now. You cannot do that with like most of the things listed on here. So we're kind of uniquely positioned. Yep. So that's a brief recap of where we're at right now.
Actually, yeah. So I have two questions. So the first one is when it comes to power consumption. So you just showed that that table again of let's see. Yeah, so just take that first one. Yeah, it's 5,500 watts, 5,400 watts. How much was the Raspberry Pi again?
Yes, I really should have showed that before I started like running SBT here. Let me.
Oh, it can't be anywhere close what the others are pulling.
Oh no, it's not. Okay, so I mentioned I got a little power plug on there. So right now we are pulling a whopping 4.8 watts, 4.5 watts.
Oh, it actually
Incredible.
shows it. I see. Yeah, nice. So, okay, literally, what, 1,000 times less wattage.
Indeed.
So my second question, so I'll frame it as a question, is you brought up multiple times that running it, is taking like 15 minutes to set up this, 20 minutes to set up that. So the way that you're currently, running Bifrost, running a node on the Raspberry Pi, is that actually the fastest way we could run a node on Raspberry Pi?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me. I totally kind of glossed over that part. The reason that I'm doing all of this, like installing Java and installing SBT, and then compiling the project, like building it locally before I can even run it. The whole reason I'm doing all of that is because of the CPU architecture of the Raspberry Pi is different from the CPU architecture of my laptop right here. So if I were to go and build a Docker image from my laptop, it would not work on my Raspberry Pi. So I need to build the Docker image from the same CPU architecture as the Raspberry Pi in order to run it. Now, like you can still do that up on GitHub workflows. You can specify a specific architecture, I'm pretty sure, to have it compile and build, and then it publishes it under like a different tag or whatever up on Docker Hub. So once we actually like get the ball rolling and get a little mute there. Yep, thank you. So once we get the ball rolling and get this thing like built and deployed nightly, for example, and published up on Docker Hub, it's going to be lightning quick to go and run this on your Raspberry Pi. It's literally just a Docker run and then the name of the image, and then it goes and pulls it, and then it runs it immediately. Like again, all this like setup stuff, building and compiling is the longest part, and users won't have to do that unless they really want to. And yeah,
I
so
think.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I think this also opens up an interesting opportunity as far as, if we're talking about something that literally pulls 4.5 watts, um, and we can run an entire build environment technically
Mhm.
on this. Yeah, yeah, you could theoretically just actually take this entire workstation you have right here and just go out in the woods somewheres and you could probably run it off that battery for like a good week or so.
Heck
Just
yeah.
go camping out in the woods and do some coding without having to be connected to anything or anybody. Man, yeah,
Uh,
this it hurts a little
so
bit
many
watching this. At least it's
like in
compiling it.
I'm showing like the fast like this is like the minimum surface of stuff that I could like I don't know, limit the stream to. All the other prep work was such a nightmare. I mean, luckily I could go and work on other things while it was doing its compile business. But yeah, like it's not even compiling anything. There's nothing to compile. I don't know what it's doing. Come on, SBT. Let's get it together.
There's some more remarks from the community. I'm gonna throw them up on screen.
Heck yeah. Bifrost. Love the name. Yeah, we have a lot of Norse mythology, not just in the name of the repository, but also in the code base. It's it's like internal code names and everything, but we definitely got a lot of it in there. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Stream off-grid Topl location. Jupiter. No one's gonna find me there. It'll be perfect.
Yeah, honestly, probably sitting by the beach.
Sitting by the beach. Yeah.
The absolute worst place to ever take a computer.
It does.
Salt.
That does remind me. It's like one part that we're not gonna be able to like showcase here today, just because of like there's a couple more tickets that we need to complete before it'll be doable. But like connecting two nodes together, in order to like actually use networking, like go full off grid and everything. Like the node does technically have networking capability, just doesn't have any ways to like it doesn't know how to start conversations. It's a lot like me. So yeah, so once we get that working, we'll be able to like bring two nodes completely off the grid, do a second part to this, maybe where the three of us are each running independent nodes somewhere else, like somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and they're all talking to each other. So I don't know. Stay tuned. We'll figure that out, hopefully.
Sounds like a good opportunity for us all to take trips.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I just
We're
gotta
gonna
go.
take a jet plane to go and prove that we're eco-friendly.
There you go. Now I gotta be able to find a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, that is the hard part. I should also mention if you leave a Raspberry Pi out in the woods running a blockchain node, someone will steal it. Raspberry Pis are worth like a fortune right now because they're like not really making them at the moment. If you go and try to buy one, like go look on eBay, it's like hundreds of dollars last I checked.
Yeah, and back to our point about real world costs, this is cheap computing and it's still we're talking $100 for about as cheap as you can get for a full computer. Um, I mean, the only thing you realistically need outside of Raspberry Pi, it is a keyboard. And it comes with a mouse. It sounds like so. You just need a screen. So yeah, even a cheap screen is probably going to run you $100 or so. So $200 all in for a keyboard, mouse, computer, and a screen.
Yeah, I looked online for the whole setup minus screen is like $180, which is such a fraction compared to the what Apollo what was it? The Apollo 4 being like $20,000 and it only does
Fair.
one thing.
Okay, this is really going to frustrate me. Like, so it reached this step on here, and usually it starts going right after this, and it's not. I swear, if I have to do this again, I just want it to run.
Yeah, 12 minutes.
Oh no, that's not. Oh geez.
Just straight crash.
It's oh yeah, the mouse doesn't move. It's um this so like what why like I did this like 3 times today just to make sure that it could handle running the node and streaming. Is there a way to no like it's not streaming to StreamYard anymore? I don't know. Oh geez. This was the worst demo ever. Wow. How about that? Like a 10-minute build up. I am annoyed. Yeah, like I can't do anything. I'm gonna have to unplug it and. Okay, I'm not. I guess for the sake of time, I'm not gonna be able to show like me sending transactions to the node, but I'll run it from Docker at least.
Gotcha.
That should be quick. Wow.
Gotta love when you do a live demo.
Right?
Yep. Never fails.
You know,
Like it can run the node fine once it's running. It's just it can't build the node and broadcast to StreamYard at the same time, I guess.
I can see that. I mean, streaming is actually intensive for, what it is.
Yeah, that's true. I did change like the resolution on this thing, like to try to help, but I guess not enough. Okay. Geez, getting back into StreamYard is going to be interesting. Here, let me shut that off for just a second. We don't need to solo layout me. It's not very interesting, is it? Let me pop open Chromium. Came with the Raspberry Pi. Okay, even this is taking forever. I guess y'all can watch. Like it's trying to load a browser. That's what it's currently doing, as you can tell. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Shut that off again real quick.
So I guess in the meantime, a good practical example to compare something like this to, it would be, a Raspberry Pi is, a really good low cost general computing platform. But another thing is that a lot of people, may not necessarily have a Raspberry Pi, but they would have a smartphone in their pocket. So this is something we've talked about in the past, and could be a good example at some point in the future is to show, phones generally have they're going to be higher cost, especially the flagship phones, iPhones and Samsungs, but they may be more accessible and, will generally actually have higher compute resources than something like Raspberry Pi. So it would actually run this, faster. So this is really like compared to even something like a phone that you have in your pocket, like a Raspberry Pi is going to be like even further down the list of going from like a desktop computer to a laptop computer to a phone to a Raspberry Pi. So
Has there been talks of running a node on the phone?
Yeah, we've previously discussed it. It's just been more of a it's more of a usability aspect than it is like a performance aspect. As far as developing usable full nodes that would run in a phone.
It is interesting though, because like most phones are on 24/7, like always talking to the network type thing. It
Right.
would be an interesting use case. So yeah, it's running. It wasn't the most glamorous demo, because I can't like show me sending transactions to this node right now because I can't talk to it from my laptop. But it would accept transactions if it weren't running in Docker. I guess you'll have to believe me. I'm trustworthy, right? It totally contradicts what I said like 3 presentations ago. Don't trust me, but yeah, we'll roll with it. So yeah, I mean, it's oh, I can show the camera again. Yeah, so it's cranking out blocks. No transactions in those blocks, so it's not really working it as hard as it could, but it's able to run. It's able to produce blocks and execute the protocol, maintain consensus with itself. Which I don't know. Sometimes I don't agree with myself. So good job, Raspberry Pi.
Now, if this were to be online and communicating on the network, how much more power consumption do you think it would take? And then that also leads to a potential like adding that into other aspects of Topl, and also within the phone scenario, would that drain the battery even faster, because more modern phones batteries last like hours, not days.
Yeah. So I'll answer the second question there. The phone would like the battery life would definitely be impacted. I mean, phones they're not always talking to the network. They do like special sleep mode type things, I think, at night to not always be polling type thing. So yeah, it would definitely impact it. If it would impact your battery life for sure. Answer the first question, if this node was actually talking to other nodes on the network, well, the act of talking to other nodes and the act of exchanging data is not very like CPU intensive or power consuming. But once you have that data, now you need to go and validate it. Again, like you can't trust anything that you receive over the network. So validating a block is technically a little bit more expensive in proof of stake than it is in proof of work. Creating blocks is, like super expensive in proof of work, and then not very expensive in proof of stake. But validating it is unfortunately a little bit more expensive in proof of stake. So if you have to validate a lot of data, then like yeah, it's probably going to impact like how this Raspberry Pi performs. I don't think that it's going to consume much more power than it currently is. Like, this is what I wanted to show, like the baseline before I started running this thing. Like before running the node, it consumes like 4 watts, and then while running
Right.
the node, it's 4.5 watts. Sorry, 4.8 watts. So like running the actual Raspberry Pi is more expensive than like the running the single process to run the node, I guess is what I mean to say. Yeah, we have a question here. Could we package a node with the Ribbon wallet? I think that this is like it's an interesting idea to think through. I don't we couldn't do it with like a web wallet or like the Chrome browser wallet. Like you wouldn't be able to run a Bifrost node in the browser, at least not without like leaning on other services to do that. So like from the browser, no, but I think like muted me again. I think like if you're running, the desktop Flutter, maybe that might be feasible. It could be something. It still needs to run like in Java or like on a JVM, which I think that kind of, for the most part, you couldn't really do it on Android, even though it looks like it runs a JVM. It's not the same. So running it on like a phone might not work. Yeah, I don't know. It's still an interesting thought though. Packaging a node with the wallet. Alrighty. So yeah, does anyone have any other questions here in the chat? Could be anything about the protocol. Could be anything about Raspberry Pi. Could be anything about batteries or solar or off grid.
What is the Pi connected to? Like the battery in the background there. What kind is that?
Oh yeah, so it's a Goal Zero Yeti, the Yeti 3000. It's a lithium ion battery chemistry, so not lithium iron phosphate, but lithium ion. So you get like 500 discharge cycles out of it, I think, before the battery capacity starts to go down. Yeah, I mean it's a good battery. It can output 1500 watts on the inverter, 3000 watts as a surge. But I'm not currently, well, actually I am using the inverter just to power my laptop. Yeah, that's the battery. 3 kilowatt hours of energy, and it's also got MPPT solar. It's got a PWM solar charge control. Like it's got a couple charge controllers on there. So yeah, fun technology. They're expensive, but they're very simple and easy to use. Got any other questions or comments? Alrighty. Well, guess last slide here. Cleanup after cooking. Well, in this case, just run the blockchain forever. You don't need to clean anything up. Just leave it in the woods. It'll be fine. Unless someone finds it and then takes your Raspberry Pi and then sells it on eBay, and then you're not fine. But hopefully that won't happen. Anyway, if you can leave it out in the woods and you got it connected to a solar panel, you could run it forever. So, thank you, sun, for giving us energy, even though we only capture like a fraction of a percent of it right now. Hopefully we'll work on that and we'll harness a little bit more of your energy in the future. Alrighty. I think that's all we got for today, right, folks? Any other parting thoughts, Brad or Nick?
I don't. I look forward to the series.
Heck yeah. Hopefully next time I won't spend 10 minutes demoing a whopping nothing and have to restart the thing. That's for next time. Alrighty. Well, I think we can we can wrap it up here. So, oh wow, that's a lovely view. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. There's this little outro thingy. That one. Appreciate you all watching. I hope you had fun. I hope you weren't too bored when this catastrophe of an experiment went downhill and then we brought it back to life. But hopefully it was a little entertaining in there. You can scan this QR code. It'll take you to our link tree. It's linktree/Topl_protocol. And there you'll find links to our Discord, our Twitter, our LinkedIn, our Twitch, our GitHub, and our YouTube. And also our website. I guess that's an important one. yeah, I mean, make sure you hit that notification bell. Subscribe to us wherever you are. If you like this content, even if you don't like this content, subscribe. There are also other really smart, entertaining people who like to give broadcasts, and maybe they will be your cup of tea. So yeah, that's all we got for today. Running Raspberry Pis out in the middle of nowhere, running proof of stake blockchain protocols out in the middle of nowhere because we can. Can't do that with proof of work, can you? Alrighty, that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much. Take care.